Hello, everyone. Welcome to a quick episode. This is an extremely windy episode, and I just had a feeling I should attempt it, even though the weather conditions, it's raining right now. It's raining, super windy, and depth. And so, I don't know if viewers are going to hear this, but I thought of expressing the energy of the moment. I am inspired to talk tonight because of an idea which in the past couple episodes I've been more and more looking deeper into. Anyways, let's just get the talk out there. The title arose, future vision suggests the mind is not convinced by the body's reality. And another title for this episode could be, Is the Mind the Future? So at the end of this episode, I'm going to make that the title. I have been wondering about the role of the human mind. I remember in my youth I was introduced, I was born in Iran's a theocratical society, and so I was introduced to religious ideas, but my father was a very spiritual person, you can say. And so I was introduced to the idea of the soul, and it was as if we had this body. And I remember at the age of 11, I had read this article that only, human beings are using only 12% of their brain. So imagine being a human being, and there's the perspective on the body, people's physical existence. There's this view of the soul, that which is beyond the mind and body. And let's say in a religious context, there's also the divine power, God's authority. So imagine with all these ideas, something that was unclear to me was the mind. It was as if ancient texts had convinced people of the idea of the soul, and modern texts had convinced people of the idea of the body. Something that was missing, something that I felt is a problem to still be solved, is how does the human being completely utilize its mind? So you can say that for some years now I have been a mind researcher, but the nature of the mind. As if I have been trying to research how the attention is being in the moment and what are the dimensions that it is present in. Something I noticed, which I found very interesting. And guys, let me just check the audio for a second. Okay, my voice is loud enough, I think. The concepts can get out there. Anyways, I'm trying to say there was a fascination for the mind due to its unknown nature. Now, experientially, I did not understand the unknown nature of the mind until, when I was way older than 11 years old. What I'm trying to tell the viewers is that I am really fascinated by this unknown variable, as if this unknown thing is happening and the human species doesn't clearly know what's up. For me, the mind's mystery is the ultimate mystery. In recent episodes, I noticed from a new angle that really the purpose of the mind is to create the future. It's as if the mind is an intelligence that wants to preserve itself. In order to preserve itself, it needs access to reality, to the original reality. So imagine there's simulations of how the world is, and then there's an original Earth. And those beings in evolution who could notice the original Earth, who could notice reality as it is, had a survival advantage compared to those who had reality clothed in abstraction. Now, the nature of the human mind is very fascinating because it gives access to the conscious entity dimension of subtler life. Now, what that means is, as I am physically speaking to you right now, in this moment, there is non-physical components to my attention. My body in the outer realms feels the wind, feels the cold, feels the nature of the physical realm. But when it comes to my mind, the attention that I am is not something that temperature can influence. What I mean by this is not that the brain is just a projector, but rather the brain is an antenna, and the nature of the signal, that is how the free will moves, is of fascination and concern. For me, I noticed that the human mind is generating all the concepts that the human being is living through. And what this means is that if we were to consider our body in time, that is possible. But if we are to consider our mind, imagine there's one human being and there's the concept of time, and there is no other human being. It's as if the ability to distinguish between what is the inner realm and the outer realm, the moment the concept, what I'm trying to say is that the body can be pinpointed in time, but the mind cannot be pinpointed in time because it is keeping the idea of time instantaneously there. So in some sense, the mind is evolutionary wise using, it's as if we are a human intelligence is actually living ahead of its body, behind its eyes, and in front of its eyes it is acting upon the inner life it has lived. What many people don't know is that the mind is rhythmically happening. That means human access to intelligence is rhythmic, aside from all of reality having a sort of cyclical and seasonal nature. What I'm trying to tell the viewers is that if we are to wonder what our minds are doing, we notice that the mind is actually attempting to live in the future before the body has entered the future. In the title, let's say subtitle as well, when I say future vision suggests the mind is not convinced by the body's reality, is because if we were an intelligence that had enough of the past and the present, it wouldn't be trying to enter the future. What the human intelligence is doing is using the known it has accumulated to project probabilities of an unknown future, and then the closer its projection, it's as if right now as I'm speaking, let's say for now, the space that is the space of awareness that is my mind, it's as if there is a movement occurring within me, and then my mouth and my voice are accompanying it. This movement is something that every human being has access. It's the nature of how we're like an antenna, but the only difference is the ability to observe, and if you trust your observance, to activate rhythm. For me, I realized that my body is based on, let's say, a genetical inspiration from the past, but my mind is constantly wondering about the future. Now, I do understand that there are metaphysical and mystical circles, and there's communities of spiritual people who are probably hearing me right now, being like, it's all here and now. Time doesn't exist. It's all nothing and being everything at once, And I understand that perspective, There's even a quote attributed to Einstein where he says we created time, so everything doesn't happen at once. That's let's say, the symbolic nature of time. But what it is that in every instantaneous moment, there is some sort of truth occurring. The concept of an illusion is very fascinating, because what is it an illusion of? Right? That's the power of origin. A human being can be trapped in any simulation of reality, and the moment they wonder about the origin of the simulation, in some sense, what simulation? You know what it is? It's as if the body is an intelligence that is using the past, and the mind is an intelligence that is using the future. Every person's life, let's say, or let me say it this way. If a person is just convinced by the past and the present, their mind doesn't need to occur. And what I mean by that is that the storytelling engine, where it's kind of like biology is encapsulating itself in abstract narrative to not freak out or, confront the chaos of the meaninglessness of life. What I'm trying to say is that the mind exists to experience the future. Our minds can be made that they are actually the future. That means, think of it this way, that my body is acting in accordance to the past, but my mind, or how I am aware of reality and how I move in reality, has a conclusion on where this energy is going in the future. From a linear sense, we were like, man, there was the past and everything's going into the future. But if time was perceived multidimensionally, that means, imagine we're in a world where in one way you could look at everything and everything's meaning is based on what has happened in the past. Imagine in one way you look at everything in the present and there needs no meaning other than just everything being present. And then the mind, let's say the intelligence, there's there's a way the world is being where everything is happening in accordance to the future. The human being's inner realms is kind of like how the future is living in the present. The person's outer realms is how the past is existing in the present. How the past is living in the present. There is a great mystery surrounding the human condition. There is no amount of knowledge or storytelling that can convince unintelligence of its unknown nature. Human attention, or let's say it this way, we have a human being that is born. The human being begins to observe reality and wonder about the dimensions. I think it's a healthy thing, just like somebody enters a new room for the first time, they look at everything in the room. To discover the conditions of one's own life means we discover their relationship with the conditions of the world. There is no individual who can claim ultimate truth, really. Because if truth is not ideological, voices cannot replace direct experiences. For me, I wonder about the motivation of my intelligence. My body follows the DNA, the commands of the DNA, and my mind follows how the free will probabilizes what it sees. I have noticed that everything is destined to go into the future, and what that means is that in a changing system, the preconceived notions of reality change. That means it's not just the world that's changing. Think of it this way, that there's an observer and the observed. The observed is the world, the observer is the consciousness aware of the world. So when the observer, let's say when the world changes, the observer is forced to change, but imagine the observer changes before the world does. That means imagine you have thought that what is looking out through your eyes is a name and personality based on the past. But now imagine what is looking through your eyes is the potential of the future. Sometimes I feel that this might be a kind of bold and abstract statement to say, but for me there's a reality to it. But right now in this moment, as I am giving these talks, as much as there is the archetype of being a microphone for the logos, there's simultaneously, it's as if my attention is how the future generations are looking at this moment. The mind, by its nature, is timeless because it is present before the conceptual reality of time and its structure comes into view. Really, what spirituality is a known being realizing it's actually an unknown being. There's many unknown ways that life is happening, and the greatest method. That means anybody who's looking for enlightenment, okay, anybody who's looking for truth, you will have to study how truth is being received. One's relationship with their self can be more than just biological and can be more than just ideological. My physical existence is like a sort of silent being. When I look at my heart, my body, when I feel my physical existence, it's as if my body is just chilling. The body is like present, and it's the mind that moves, in which the body follows its movement. What it is we are from an additional unknown dimension of our intelligence, being able to consider physical information and non-physical radiations of the physical information, and to use them simultaneously to enter states of novelty. And what novelty means is how the past enters the future. Dear viewers, could there be a possibility that we are defining ourselves just by our physical component to the moment, and there has been a complete non-physical agenda of intelligence that's been happening? As much as we are human beings in space, the mind is simultaneously being the space where the human being finds itself in. A person's presence is actually how the whole moment is being the world. It could be that what the soul is an inconceivable collective state that eventually the human species is headed for. Think of it this way, there is an unnatural dimension to life, there's a natural dimension to life. In the natural dimensions of life, there's individual perception, there's an individual mode, and there's a collective mode. Now imagine so let's say that's for the unnatural, and the natural dimensions, there's an individual and there's a collective. What I'm trying to say is that we human beings have access to 4 states of being, right? So if I wanted to naturally be a collective being, it would be as if the ever-present quality of my mind is just trusted. These talks that I give, the only way I'm considering that I'm capable of giving them is simply because it's like the fool's trust in the unknown. Human intelligence means the world can update. Says, what is the mind used for? It is all relevant to the future. The concept of value, the search for value, is all about the future. I find it to be crazy to stay in the present and consider that the universal intelligence is just one being. That is equivalent to saying everything is nothing. So always imagine in the states of human mind as if everything is nothing. It's like emptiness is the finale. And then from another view, nothing is everything. That means infinite fullness is the finale. The mind, its timeless nature, at its core, is, at least the way I experience experience my own mind is that there's a presence, kind of like a beam of attention, as if consciousness is the spotlight that is not part of the stage of manifestation, but is shining upon it, is revealing it. If the mind was convinced by the body's reality, which is the past, that means if the past was enough, and if the present was enough, human life wouldn't need to move. You know, it's like in a strange way, we're blessed to be in a changing world because new dimensions can be revealed. Imagine the world was like a photo. Imagine we're all living inside a photo, inside a changeless picture, you know. Because reality changes, just evolution has conditioned the mind to plan ahead. Everybody listening to me right now, your intelligence is actually, I mean, it depends, you know. This is my view on a human being, like the modern person. I have this view that where every person is at the edge of the future of their inner realms. You know, in the future, we will have such a great awareness that they will comfortably be able to move in their inner realms and comfortably to move in the outer realms. The mind is another way of saying nature is present in an unconditional way. Where does our attention go when we visit or revisit the board? I feel that four angles to this world can be seen. Pretty much all my ideological systems that I speak about in these lectures can be categorized, can be considered this model, where pretty much I've used four symbols: 0, 1, 2, infinity, the infinity symbol. And for me, these four symbols, I call them Ring of the Absent Heaven, and they actually depict every possible movement of a consciousness found in let's say, a conscious persona. For me, reality has a possibility of being, let's say, the number 0. That means right now, like to me, this is the development of an advanced communicator and advanced human being. That the human being has an ability to look at everything like, okay, nothing has to mean anything. Nothing has to mean anything. That means a person could look at the meaninglessness of the world and rather than react to it through fear, be able to consciously stand in that observance. So the person's like, okay, everything can be have no value. Then the person looks at it through the singular dimension. This is where I say it's like you're a singularian. You know, it was those who look at reality and its value is 0. It's as if you're a voidist, voidist, right? Those people who look at reality and it's singular, to me they are, poetically I call them the singularians. Those who look at reality, right, you can consider them the dualitarians or dualists, but I like the term dualitarian, right? And the notion, the view is that in one view, everything is equal to nothing. In one view, everything is equal to one value. In another view, everything is equal to the endless dance of chaos and order, which technically means two values. Now, the fourth symbol I use is infinity, and the reason for this is that if somebody was like, what is beyond the dualistic nature of the mind, you actually find the infinitude of the relationships of chaos and order. So what that means is, let's say you as a person has wondered about the concept of chaos, and you have wondered about the concept of order, and you are perceiving that as a self. Now imagine you could envision an infinite, let's say, regression or extension, right, of this archetype of, let's say, a chaotic self and an ordered self. I tried this with my mind, and I found myself poetically, or let's say philosophically, in Plato's world of forms. I would say, I'll declare it because it's so part of my experience, I think I am one of those human beings on this planet where, for me, I have entered Plato's world of forms by nature. That means my attention to geometry has allowed ways for reality to move in my inner realms geometrically, that in some sense I have realized a sort of infinitude in the background. Like, we think that behind this life is just a sort of meaningless death, and even though that's a plausible idea, the notion is, what else could there be if that is not the actuality, right? And so for me, it's as if, like, what if instead of death there is an infinite echo, right? There's an infinite continuity, as if on some level energy cannot be created and destroyed, and if consciousness was energy, in actuality it's as if it's the complete definition of the reincarnation of the soul. That means if the soul was energy, that in the ancient times they would say the soul cannot be destroyed, created, or destroyed, but it transitions from lifetime to lifetime. And so in a secular context, aside from a metaphysical, we have the concept of energy being not created or destroyed, but being able to change appearance. Right? It's as if it's too easy to consider that the box on mankind's head is unmovable. Hidden dimensions sometimes arise if a species earns it. Right? You know, it's like a person who thinks they're thinking for a moment. They just take it in, and the person's like, oh my god, is my mind creating the future right now? Does my mind's survivability depend on how accurate of a vision of a future I have? You see, the hilarious thing about, I would say, the self-help industry in the New Age community and whatnot is that to truly help yourself is a solo act. And human psychology is so conditioned to be part of a system that it never knows what it is outside the system. Will be born where they will not be content with the answers given so far. An advanced civilization is upon the human species, whoever you are, whatever you are listening. You know, it's as if some briefings are intended for the universal sector, as if the greatest way that a human being could speak was to speak to the cosmos, as if the ears of everything is listening. Within the inner realms of a person's attention, let's say, is too pulled into their inner realms, they may stop caring for the outer realms. This can lead to dehumanization. This is my vision, my view on the psychology of the human being. That if you, let's say, think of it this way, there's a personal version of the world that is behind your eyes, and there's an impersonal version of the world that is in front of our eyes. The impersonal version of the world everybody has access to. The personal version of the world only you have access to. So it's as if poetically, once the soul opened its eyes in the world, it was gifted with the privilege to be the awareness of dimensions as much as their expression. Right now, if I just identify with my body, I'm a human being. And in order to even identify with the idea of the human, I require to be a human mind. And so it's as if I'm this human mind, with a human body in a world built and defined and named by humans. And I am wondering how much of the being is in actuality beyond the limits of humanized value. So what that means is that we could suddenly realize in the middle of human history that what has been moving human history is something that is not limited to the objects and subjects discovered so far. The mystery of consciousness will usher in an era of collective beinghood. That's what happens. That means you could say, from one perspective, is a species ready to meet extraterrestrials. From another perspective, is the species ready to realize its ability to be a collective mind. I am personally, this is my impression, this is my view, that all human beings are connected by the energy of their design. That means there's a hidden mind of the species. That means there's a collective mind. This collective mind is not God, but you can say poetically inconceivable eyes envision witness the collective as much as the individual. And this is something that only shamans discover about the nature of karma. Karma is how the universe replies, to the individual's voice. What is power other than the permission of its consumption? The power of the human species is how 8 billion biological physical positions manage to, in some sense, through a non-physical rhythm, in some sense, bring forth the next great chapters of the human being. Whoever you are listening to me right now, the culture of the modern world is to be just preoccupied with the past and the present. The future is how else, in what other way, the present and the past truths can move, right? That means it's as if at some point the human being, finds this sort of anger, and I shouldn't say anger, but I would say a sort of inner realm chaos. Some people say, Mr. Within, have you had a chaotic experience? I'll be in the inner realms. Yeah, that means there's a sort of, let's say, cruelty in the outer realms. Let's say people, are just, let's say they speak very rudely, that's the type of cruelty. Okay, inner ideological cruelty. However, therefore, those people who engage in mysticism, there is the chaos of not interference in the domain of one's free will, but the chaos that the free will was never there. So you see, the inner realms, these are like dimensions we're standing in. Imagine as you're giving a talk right now, in another dimension you're sitting on a couch in let's say, space station. Or let's say in some spaceship in another dimension. The human psychology is still in the domain of duality. So what that means is that we have not, let me tell you, I'm expecting extraterrestrial contact, probably to properly take place in 200 years, not because that's how long extraterrestrials take to get here, but that's how long it will take for us to be able to acknowledge them. You see, the mysteries of reality, what can we do? Let's say a person finds a mysterious truth, what can they do with it? Right? So on some level, they just experience it. There's a direct experiential component where the person's like, all right, truth is experientially happening, and so truth is being. But in another approach, it's as if, how can we turn this into a concept that the human species can in some sense develop? What really ushers in an advanced civilization is that there needs to be an incredible complex network of inventors, designers, and futurists all over the planet. That's it. Designers will save the past and the present from the ignorance of the future's ignorance. Excuse me, I should say future's ignorance, from the ignorance of the future. You know, it's very redemptive. It's very liberating. You know, if I was to say what has been one of the most humbling moments of my life, is not that when I realized I'm nothing, but it was that moment when I realized space cannot die. If there's a chance, 0. whatever zeros you want, 1% chance that we have been the space where matter is in, as much as the matter in the space. If we discover the roots of an individual mind in a collective field, so what that means is, imagine we think that our personalities and free will is just arising from our, individual soul, but poetically what's going on is that the soul is like a player in a world, and this player is connected to a server. And it's a strange way of saying, just like how, let's say there's doppelgangers of people on other parts of the world, I would say there's these oversoul algorithms that are taking place. My own personality, I attribute it to that. So it's another way of saying, like, imagine a psychologist, or let's say somebody wondering about somebody with a fascination for psychology, looking at the human being and being like, what's going on here? So you see a body moving, then you wonder, okay, what's moving the body? Then the answer comes, the mind. What in the mind is moving the body? Free will. What is free will? The control of attention. What is the nature of, it's like, what happens after you control attention? You discover the nature of the world. The edge of the human being is the world. So, aside from the world and the forces of nature moving it, there is something as if like the spirit, I don't know how to say it. Let's say the soul of the spirit, in Vedic thought they called it Parabrahman, right? And what it meant is that agency that has free will consciously in the moment is simultaneously being influenced and present through a greater agency that is the space of the soul of all energetic expression, similar to one. I'm a person who in real life I have a twin brother, and physically we look similar, but our personalities are from different worlds, and it's as if like, you know what it is? It's as if like there are invisible mind groups, okay? Somebody told me a very science fiction idea, and I'll say it this way: it's this view that imagine Earth, not from the timeline of an evolutionary animal, but imagine Earth from a view outside of Earth. So imagine there was like a camera in outer space that was that was viewing, that was taking surveillance of the Earth. Okay. Now imagine from that view, we see that different extraterrestrial groups enter the planet and discover that the planet is not a physical place, but it's a multidimensional place, and each begin building in those dimensions. What I'm trying to say is that in one side of the coin, a bunch of human beings on Earth and being mysteriously moving, but on the other side of the coin, what the oversoul is how collective minds organize themselves among each other. So it's as if like there's like my voice, it's coming from my personality is coming from my free will in the moment, but the effort that I am finding in this moment, the energetic effort to communicate or have the moment express, it's coming from a sort of witnessing force, as if at the depth of what is looking out through my eyes, at the source of it, it is neither a subject or an object. So reality can simply be. What I'm trying to say is that the idea of the oversoul is another way of saying how a dimension is moving a mind. But a dimension is moving the mind of another dimension. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. In the Puranas, this series of ancient books written by Rishi Vyasa, and Rishi Vyasa is he's someone who I feel strangely as if I have looked through his eyes. In the Puranas, he shares the story of this yogi that was constantly trying to be in this meditative samadhi, ready for enlightenment state, trying to, consciously leave his body. And so he's sitting in the forest in this super still, like not moving for the longest time meditation, right? And one day as he's by the river meditating, he sees that a tiger is chasing this pregnant deer. And this pregnant deer just runs into the river, say, from the other side of the river. And this yogi is sitting on the side. So pretty much like the tiger doesn't cross the river, the pregnant deer crosses the river. And so something strange ends up happening, that this yogi saves the baby deer, right? And the mother dies and the baby deer is alive. And so the story goes that this yogi starts taking care of this baby deer, right? And then that moment when his enlightenment, let's say that moment comes when he's about to die, right? He suddenly sees the baby deer run away, and the thought in his mind when he dies is like, what's going to happen to that deer? And in the Puranas it says that this dude, like this yogi, reincarnates as a deer, but reincarnates as a deer that has access to all of his memories. All the memories of all his lifetimes. And in the story he eventually climbs, the mountain of, let's say, solar evolution. is that the nature of our mind, it's like our mind is being our mind because there is a body here. If the body's not in the moment, what does the mind identify? And that's kind of discovering your unknown presence as a human being. The mind's ability to envision the future suggests that the mind is not trying to live in the present or the past. That means it's hilarious, but the future is what has allowed us or helped mankind to survive. This might be a bizarre idea, but for me, the concept of truth is where everything is going by the nature of how it started. When I look at my body, its truth is a return to the earth, like the periodic table stops being me. But when I wonder about the nature of my mind, it's just this realization that I was never any subject that I entertained into the world. And then what the person is left with is that unknown presence. That unknown presence has a simplicity to it where the person's intelligence automatically becomes rhythmically peaceful. You know what it is? Imagine like somebody's bewildered and suddenly somebody starts playing an instrument and their mind calms down. It's as if they heard the movements of another reality, so their suffering in the previous reality became insignificant. It's as if their attention was hopping to a world where a greater freedom seemed to already be there. The future will be awesome. Why? Because it can be. You know? There was this question in philosophy where somebody was like, why WH question mark, and all the philosophers in the world were like, holy shit, what a question, you know? And they realized that the only answer to the question why is why not. And when I think about why should the human advancement, the potential of that of human beings activate, and the answer is why not. It's as if why not are we all living in an advanced civilization right now? There's obviously enough intelligent people on the planet, you know. There's enough capable human beings to begin structuring and building networks where ideas are from all corners of the world, you know, chasing the grand stage where, how would I say it? It's as if we need to make a coliseum of the greatest ideas, and from that, let's say a tornado of advancement arises all over the world. Multidimensional being, or let's say the ability of a multidimensional being, is based how would I say it? Everything that has a quality in the world can be reverse engineered back into how the attention in the moment is held. The nature of the mind is that this is pretty much how nature happens, is that it does not question itself. It just instantaneously occurs. But the nature of man's mind is that it occurs different than the outer realm. So it's as if like our mind is living in our own version of the world, and our bodies living in the only version of the world, let's say. So then the person's like, okay, if my mind is incomplete due to me being just one person in a world so big with 8 billion other people, right? So it's as if, where is the value of living movement? And it comes to the future. Some people say they have past lives. Mr.Within says, wonder about your future life. I want to go into a quote tunnel and quotes of Guru Padmasambhava. I don't know if the viewers know this, but in 2013, I think I broke the Guinness World Records of being the most Tibetan Buddhist Persian guy on the planet. Guru Padmasambhava says, and this is Guru Padmasambhava is considered like the second Buddha. Like he's pretty much like, actually not a Buddha, he's a Bodhisattva. Right? So some beings from lesser worlds, they get to say an enlightened world, and some beings from an enlightened, it's as if like from some beings have come from lower worlds, and some people have come from the upper worlds, and Earth is actually an airport, poetically, for souls that move beyond their limits. So Guru Padmasambhava is an enlightened bodhisattvic being, and the concept of the bodhisattva is that the bodhisattva keeps reincarnating on Earth until the collective enlightenment occurs. And the collective enlightenment is the freedom of how the meaning of the world is beginning. So, Guru Padmasambhava says, are you oblivious to the sufferings of birth, old age, sickness, and death? There is no guarantee that you will survive even past this very day. The time has come for you to develop perseverance in your practice, for at this singular opportunity you could attain the everlasting bliss of nirvana. So now is certainly not the time to sit idly, but starting with the reflection on death, you should bring your practice to completion. The moments of our life are not expendable, and the possible circumstances of death are beyond imagination. If you do not achieve an undaunted, confident security now, what point is there in your being alive, O living creature? You see, guys, Guru Padmasambhava is talking to not the soul of an idea, but the soul of how the moment is happening. You see, for me, the enlightened, the greatest enlightened beings on this planet are lions that have roared, and all sectors of reality have heard the roar. Pretty much it's like how the songs of an advanced civilization begin. Lions that were convinced by the wool, over their eyes. Roar in ways that humanity becomes its own sunrise. For me, an advanced civilization means freedom of the context of mind. Personality has its allure. Okay? Like, I understand that a human being's personality can, in some sense, it's like, imagine, a person goes to the movie theaters, right, sees a film, and imagine a person talks to someone, sees the animation of who they are in the moment. And so really, friendship is about what films we want to watch, In what ways does the attention want to exist? Guru Padmasambhava says, how very remorseful are you who have accumulated evil. On this dangerous red passageway, traversed by all, when you are brought to trial by the executors of Yama's rites, even though you may have been once very powerful, here it will be of no avail. Now is the time for the hearts and lungs of all great wrongdoers to be torn apart. Since you have practiced non-virtue, this reckoning of your past actions will be quicker and more powerful than lightning. So by fleeing you will not escape, and by showing remorse this will be of no help. How pitiful are the human beings of Talmud, Valpa, who do not strive to practice the sacred teachings. And let me tell you how I would interpret this quote. Guru Padmasambhava is saying, if you have, let's say, let's say every human being is a rare opportunity to be alive as the lifetime of a being, right? Like being born is like, no way I get to be in existence. We should have like an existence appreciation day for like every in the world, you know. But anyways, I think what Guru Padmasambhava is saying is that if you hurt the world, right? Imagine life is a problem to solve, and instead of you trying to solve the problem, you rip the piece of paper where the problem was on, right? So those people who get pulled into evil by the promises of desire simulations, let me tell you what ends up happening. You realize you went the wrong way. That's how evil turns into good. You just realize the nature of the experience unnecessarily moved. You see, we have reached a time where the situation of life is so bizarre. 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and this nowhere was so intense that language was a reaction, was a strategy for a species to cover its eyes from in some sense, the unbelievable. We are in an unbelievable situation, dear viewers. This doesn't mean belief is wrong, but it means that language is not truth. If one thinks language is truth, then it's as if the world has become smaller. Guru Padmasambhava in that quote was saying that don't do the unnecessary, because you will end up in an unnecessary place, right? This is the understanding of evil, right? Anybody who does something evil, you experience poetically your mind shrinks. This is the best way I could say. Anybody who's being evil right now on the planet, you shrink your mind. And the ancient Greeks wanted to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. And imagine we de-evolve, right? So de-evolution is you could say a great sin, right? And the savageness of human beings has, in some sense, we are living as civilized entities, right? And what's being an entity in civilization means that you are here to see who you can be. This is the game the mind is playing with its future vision. The main question is, let's say a person's task in life, the question is, does the person love their grandson? Imagine somebody has a grandson and they're like, do I love my grandson, or could I love my great to infinity grandson, equivalent to, let's say, the grandson visit? The nature of the mind is understanding how it is present. The sharpness of the mind is based on experiential activation. A person can close their eyes and they can actually live in a version of the world that they modify. That is possible. But when it comes to the task of truth, it means, what is it that everybody needs to consider that would unlock the ultimate potential of a group of creatures on a rock? Like, that to me is the purpose of life. advanced life can be. And advanced doesn't mean our fear of tragedy denied our exploration. It's as if the soul of man is it's like just evolution. As much as it has been surviving, that survival has been done through exploration. And what exploration means is there's a physical exploration, you climb a mountain never climbed before, or you never, nobody got on before, or the mentality becomes something where a person begins exploring the nature of their mind. And you will discover, as Sri Maharshi says in his final teaching, if I could find it. Hold on, guys. Ramana Maharshi says, this is his final teaching. He says there's neither creation nor destruction, neither destiny nor free will, neither path nor achievement. This is the final truth, and it's another way of saying it's omnipresence. Omnipresence means the creation and the life and death are simultaneously happening. That means, what is it that is aware of the fullness of the moment and its absence? It's as if the concept of shape, color, and space are not in time, but when they move, then the concept of time exists. The human species needs to cultivate courage through a great contextual honor. There's been moments where I've been afraid, but the idea of doing something for a greater force than oneself has been very interesting. It's like Nikola Tesla, at that time he says something where he says the future is mine. And what he means is that he's working for something that he's seen the future of. We have experienced an inefficient civilization. The only thing left is an efficient one. We have experienced the era of inefficient selves. When will the advanced humanity awaken? It's another way of saying, when will each human being on this planet realize they deserve their most advanced vision? The idea of vision is incredible because it's kind of like how memory keeps a moment. Memory contains the moment. Right now I'm looking at my computer and I'm like, what does this computer mean? no idea behind the subject. That means no subject behind the object. So what I mean by that is like we can look at it. I'm looking at this. I call this a computer, but on some level, it's just a pure object in space, nameless object. Right. So similarly, when it comes to one's own self, there's a way that consciousness can perceive to be of there's a way consciousness can perceive to be completely singular. That means, like I'd say, like right now, I have an ability, to some degree, to be nothing. That it's like I've noticed that. Now, at the same time, I've had experiences where the whole moment was a single presence. Like right now, I'm a human being. My moment has moments where I identified with the whole moment. It was as if the fear of self led to the discovery of the collective presence. For me, the great honor of life, it's as if, like, why did nature, after 4.5 billion years, somehow acquire separation and language, to in some sense build a world inside a world. Take the same species is in the game of world building. We were, let's say, creatures in nature, and the moment we developed self-awareness, we separated ourselves from nature. What I'm trying to say is the human species was found in a natural world. It built an unnatural civilization, and it built an unnatural world of language. In ancient times, they had this view that the initial introduction of language and speech was like magic to the mind that had never heard dialogue. And what magic was, in some sense, the entrapment of attention in one image. What I'm trying to say is that language points to an image, a conscious mind observes the images, and in some sense a feeling of meaning arises. If the conscious mind stops the exploration and just, let's say, bunkers down in one ideological belief, that's what I call ideological possession. Right? It's like it's not just, let's say the concept of, people being possessed by demons and then, people channeling angels. Like, to me, what that is what sort of quality to the moment is evoked. That means if the person had an ability to look at something and discover that there's multiple points of view at that same moment, they would in some sense be freed from the conviction of just one moment. Spin. Sorry, guys, I needed a quick intermission. You know, the mystery of the mind is every person's puzzle to solve. Sometimes I think about what could really true spirituality mean. What does a spiritual life mean? And I think, does it mean a parallel life? Or does it mean a transcendental life? Right now, if I am being a biological entity, that's one parallel life. Being an ideological entity, that's, let's say, another parallel life. And then I am also being how this universal sector is happening. It's as much as I'm being a person in the cosmos, I'm also the cosmos, the individual, which is another way of saying the laws of the world puppeteer us. That means, imagine the person's like, okay, I'm a self, and then they're like, how do I know I'm a self? Because there's a world. How do I know there's a world? And we say it's because we're a self first, right? So the nature of the mind meets a sort of paradoxical state, where it's like, how could I be a self before I chose a self? Mysticism is about self-realization. The nature of the self is codependent to the idea of the world, so technically the world is being self as well. To be free from, let's say, a person who says like self-realized, or let's say an enlightened individual, that enlightenment is like freedom from dimensions. So it's like this view that an enlightened being wouldn't have the concept of enlightenment because the direct experiential reality is present. The most immediate way to directly experience truth is to look at your direct experience. Look at how the moment is experiencing itself directly. And in some sense, when it comes to the inner realm, people have different temperaments. I noticed that somehow in my psychology I preserve a sort of playful archetype, and it's as if I've released that playful archetype in Plato's world of forms, a purely geometrical dimension. And you know what's remarkable? In a world where there is so much we don't know, any effort is reality. The story of the world can instantly change to a better one if the attention of all human beings suddenly eliminates. You know how I feel civilization is? And advanced civilization, right, is equivalent to like the most advanced beings appearing in front of you. So imagine you're somebody walking in the park and the most advanced beings in the universal sector appear. Right? Imagine like the most advanced extraterrestrials appear right in front of us in the park. Right? I'm saying and so imagine you are in the presence of the most advanced, and what the most advanced means is that it has gone beyond the archetypes of honor, and it has completed its journey of honor into benevolence. And benevolence is, I would say, the most advanced state, and the most advanced It's like benevolence is the aroma of the free heart. You know, the mind's job is to be the future. It's like design the future, attempt its design, and then be the future. You know, this is, I would say, the most revolutionary thing I'm doing in this podcast. I'm saying human beings should allow their future potential to define them. Anyways, I'm going to go back to the group opposite Overcoat Tunnel. Guru Baba says, please guide all beings from this swamp of cyclical existence. Guru Baba says, in modern science, the methods of analysis are principally applied to investigating the nature of material entities. Thus, the ultimate nature of matter is sought through a deductive process, and the microscopic world is reduced to the microscopic world of particles. Yet, when the nature of these particles is further examined, we find that ultimately their very existence as objects is called into question. It's pretty much like the journey of the eye externally and sometimes returns to how it's internally happening. So it's another way of saying most people who are interested in, for me, mysticism, I call it advanced communication. Right, and I feel that the species has to advance its communication, because why else is the ability there? Why are we creatures designed ears and a mouth? Right, like it's as if the existential design is telling us what to do. Right, and so the advancement of communication is trying to see what the most advanced version of the world is. This is the ultimate homework. You know? People on the planet are trying to solve one problem, trying to solve the problem of how do we or open up or activate the ultimate potential of the species. That means it's as if, should we care to see an advanced future, or should we just allow nature's savageness to be solved? That past quote, I don't know if it's a comment on it. I don't know. It's from this book, written by Group Opposite. Anyways, I'll just read it because it says it's Group Opposite. But anyways, the quote says, "But nevertheless, if there's even the slightest recognition, the equation is easy. Should you ask why this is so, it is because once the awesome, terrifying, and fearful appearances arise, the awareness does not have the luxury of distraction. The awareness is one-pointedly concentrated." That's so incredible. It says, should you ask why this is so, it is because once the awesome, terrifying, and fearful appearances arise, the awareness does not have the luxury of distraction. The awareness is one-pointedly concentrated. Yeah, that means it's like the act of, let's say, multi-layered self-simulation. In all of them revert to the original, the moment, and intensity. Anyways, Guru Baba says, abandon your notions of the past without attributing a temporal sequence. Cut off your mental associations regarding the future without anticipation. Rest in a spacious modality without clinging to the thoughts of the present. Do not meditate at all, since there's nothing upon which to meditate. Instead, revelation will come through undistracted mindfulness, since there's nothing by which you can be distracted. So, you know what he's saying here? What I find Guru Baba is suggesting? He's saying that the moment you think of it this way, when you don't know what you are to look for the future is foolish. So Guru Simbhava is saying, through an undistracted mindfulness, it's as if you discover the presence of your attention. When you discover the presence of your attention, then the future is not even something conceptual, and it's more like being that sort of trust in how the moment is happening to me. Or I don't know, maybe another way, being to happen. Like, we should connect those words, being and happening. Let's say we call it happen. It's not the best way. It's like the word happening and being to be the same. I think a happen being is like the thing I can consider now. It's like, what's happened being right now, Anyways, I'll keep going with the quotes. Rupa Simbhava says, it is undeniably the case that in our society we do not easily accept that death is a natural part of life, which results in a perpetual sense of insecurity and fear. And many are confused at the time of death of a loved one, not knowing what they can do to help the one that has passed away or how to address their own grief. Exploring ways of overcoming our fear of death and adapting a creative approach at the time of bereavement, that is, focusing one's energy on supporting the one that has passed away, are both extraordinary benefits of the insights and practices that are so beautifully expressed. When I think of these things, okay guys, I think this website is like, it says Guru Pava Simbhava quotes, but it's just like passages from, let's say, some person's version of the book. See, the better this website, man, I can't find these quotes. Okay, whatever, here. Guru Padmasambhava says, you may speak like the lion of speech, Manjushri, but unless you take to heart the primordially pure nature of resounding emptiness, that will not prevent the ripening of karma. Okay, I'll read that again. He says, you may speak like the lion of speech, but unless you take to heart the primordially pure nature of resounding emptiness, that will not prevent the ripening of karma. So taking to heart the primordially pure nature of empty resounding. Simbhava says, you may have the bravery of a strong fighter, but unless you possess the intelligent strength of discriminating knowledge, you will not turn the tide in the battle with samsara. So possess the intelligent strength of discriminating knowledge. That I interpret as like the advancement of communication. Simbhava says, you may possess the power and might of a world ruler, but unless you gain mastery over your own mind when the time of death arrives, you still haven't attained the power of freedom. So gain mastery over your mind, which is another way of saying understand how you're being right now. Guru Padmasambhava says, you may try to support your family and friends, but at the time of death, all other actions besides the virtuous practices of Dharma activities will have been pointless. constantly apply yourself to spiritual practices in thought, word, and deed, which is another way of saying wonder about the nature of reality rather than ignore it. It's as if, what do we do with the intense dimensions of life? We have to acknowledge them to some degree. Like, there was a time where I thought surgeons had to be like crazy people. But then I realized it is the depth of ability. It's more like a mastery of mind. As if when you master your mind, new dimensions are unlocked. Anyways, back to the quote telling, guys. Mr. says you may consume all kinds of delicious food, but unless you adhere to the nectar of the innate nature, it all turns into a heap of filth, so drink the nectar of the profound instructions. Guru Padmasambhava says you may gather wealth and possessions, but only the two accumulations can be enjoyed after death. So gather the two accumulations as much as you can. Guru Padmasambhava says your castle of earth and stone may be beautiful, but unless you dwell in the fortress of unchanging, you may depart and be with me. So keep to the fortress of unchanging, that's the realize your unknown presence of intelligence. That means awareness to awareness, simultaneous awareness of self and world. The moment is being before anything could, ultimate realness. Guru Padmasambhava says, you may pursue worldly fame and gain, but unless you follow the teachings of the Buddha, such activity will only be the cause for throwing you back into further samsara. So adhere to the teachings of the Buddha. Guru Padmasambhava says when you keep company with an eminent master, his qualities will automatically influence you. Guru Padmasambhava says when your appearance conforms with worldly conventions, you will encounter less criticism. When your mind looks into itself, Dharmata will dawn from within. Guru Padmasambhava says when you recognize the nature of mind, fabrication and effort are naturally freed. Guru Padmasambhava says when you realize that samsara and nirvana are dharmakaya, you need not put effort into meditation practice. Guru Padmasambhava says fortunate ones mingle your mind with Dharma and the happiness of Buddhahood. And the happiness of Buddhahood will manifest within you. When asked about the importance of receiving teachings and dedication, Agape Lama answered, whatever Dharma practice we engage in, large or small, we must dedicate the merit. If we fail to dedicate, then whatever merit we have accumulated can be lost very easily in a moment of anger, or in giving rise to any inflictive emotion or action. What an incredible quote. Guru Padmasambhava said, it says, the Buddha said that when we dedicate merit, it is like adding a drop of water to the ocean. Just as a drop of water added to the ocean will not dry up but will exist as long as the ocean itself exists, so too if we dedicate the merit of any virtuous deed, it merges with the vast ocean of merit that endures until enlightenment. It's another way of saying live for the ultimate. That's what it means. That means it's as if all actions are being done to not serve the truth of man, but to serve the truth of cosmic occurrence. Guru Padmasambhava says if you want to know your past life, look into your present condition. If you want to know your future life, look at your present actions. Guru Padmasambhava says, I'm a person in front of anyone who has faith in me, just as the moon casts its reflection effortlessly in any vessel filled with water. The eagle that is flying high in the sky should not forget that it should come down one day to see its shadow. Empty cognizance of one taste suffused with knowing is your unmistaken nature, the uncontrived original state when not altering what is. Allow it to be as it is, and the awakened state is right now spontaneously present. Guys, I think these quotes don't get any more enlightening than that. You see, the mystery of reality is one where all our judgments are in its shadow. Like what I'm trying to say is the world is so big that nobody's judgment really means anything. You know, and it's more like the exploration of intelligence on a rock in the middle of nowhere. I'm going to talk about, at the end of this episode, I'm going to change the title to Is the Mind the Future? And so I guess what I could say about that is that it has no choice but to be the future. The body is being the past and the present. You know what's fascinating? It's like we say in language that we have memories, right? But who is having the memory is also considered a memory. So it's as if it's impossible for a thought to think or a memory to have a memory. So it's in some sense impossible for man to just be shackled like a titan to an idea. Dear viewers, language is a world and civilization is a world in a world, and language is a world inside that world. And cyberspace is going to become the fourth world. There's 4 worlds where attention can move. I am, let's hear what being like, why not? Why not if the whole species has considered that it's temporary creatures, let's say people right now are living as if they're temporary individuals, okay? Temporary creatures on the planet. Now I'm thinking, like, if the whole thing was flipped like a pancake, and suddenly everybody lived in a world where everybody knew they were eternal. Just imagine that. Imagine, and I've even visualized in my science fiction. You know, I wrote a script called The Immortal Philosophy. The idea of it, you know, was in some sense the first philosopher to become immortal. And this philosopher was seeing the karma of his ideology and philosophies. You see, to visualize one's presence, it's an act of mind. he's saying, first detach, become unideologically possessed, then wonder about the potential of the mind. You know, the poet Rumi, he says something where he says, he's talking about the evolution of the soul, and in his poetry he says, I died as a mineral and I became a plant. I died as a plant and I was an animal. I rose to man. I died as an animal and I was man. Why should I fear death? When was I less by dying? I shall die once more to soar with angels blessed, but even from angelhood I must pass on to that which no mind has conceived. And it's as if he reaches a point where the unknown is being the unknown, and the truths of man and the stories and the void, in some sense, they're all resolved. You see, what is freedom but the spaciousness of the novelty's entrance? We seek freedom, but why? Right, that means imagine, that's a great question, why are we seeking freedom? And because we're thinking we're temperate beings, freedom can be a second nature assumption of the creature. And by being a second nature, it's another way of saying the inner realms has a choice of giving meaning to the outer realms, and a person can give meaning to what they see based on its future, rather than just a past analysis and a present impression. Our species is too advanced, too capable, and too humorous, right? Because our species has a sense of humor. It's as if, like, the gods, poetically, the gods can't get rid of the human being, We're like that species who, like, fell and, like, made everybody in the room laugh, but it didn't mean, it's like, I'll be honest, the human species is probably, if there was, let's say, extraterrestrials or higher dimensions watching, the human species would be like a comedy act. It would be like the Laurel Hardy or Charlie Chaplin kind of a species where it's stumbling but it's getting through. The great task for a species to identify as a species and then become responsible for the areas of its conscience and influence. It's as if everybody's alive to some degree physically once, right? So it's as if it's like everybody's on a roller coaster and your age suggests how long you've been on the roller coaster. And so everybody has been a sort of attention mapping through the space-time continuum and correlating, events into, like, a narrative of self. The swiftness of the attention. It's as if what is our heart beating for, and the mind discovers its potential purpose. For me, I thought, like, if I'm somebody who wants to build an advanced civilization, I'm like, how can I convince all the good and evil people to build an advanced civilization together? And the argument I came up with was simply that, the good and evil are existing in a world. Why not good and evil pause the chaos and order kind of battle, right? And for a moment it just becomes all good and evil entities in the realm. Forget the, let's say, horizontal game of good and evil, and vertically just advance the world. That means the argument is that good and evil stop being good and evil until we have built an advanced civilization where good and evil could be means it's like the context can change without the concept being destroyed. You know, imagine all the evil people in the future. It's as if they just put on virtual reality goggles. Like imagine there's a child born with like an urge to be a dictator, right? So it's as if like the parents buy a virtual reality, let's say cyberspace goggles, where that kid experiences, you know, being a dictator of its cyber worlds, you know. Because on some level, what karma is how occupied we are with the energetic event of the moment, rather than the stability of the presence of the watcher that is now. You know, that means keep in mind, viewers, in listening to these talks, you may suddenly realize it's like it's the voice of an unknown being, but the reality of reality is that we are all unknown beings. Knowledge is like an artwork of one moment, you know, it's the snapshot of one moment, you know, but reality's mystery is it's a film, right? And we want to see the greatest achievement of humanity, which is the advanced civilization. Just the idea of an advanced civilization, guys, gives me goosebumps, right? Because it means it's a civilization that is seeing way beyond the dimensions we are seeing now. That means it's like it's an assumption of total natural advancement and total unnatural advancement. The eyes of mankind is the future's entrance. You know, I'm like this guy talking about this stuff, but at the same time, you know, there's aspects to me where I am also bewildered, you know, and let me tell you what I mean by this. It's like, imagine seeing that your inner realm allows you to see infinite geometrical variations to a shape. So I've experienced that. I've experienced a sort of, let's say, abstract infinitude in my inner realms, and the conclusion where I've reached by experiencing that is this realization that where my attention goes, the dimensions of the world take shape and form. And I am saying that it's time for the species to complete in watching the films of its past and find itself just simply present, and in the present the future awaits. The future is what truth is. It's like entering the future is the aftermath of truth. It's like what truth does. Ultimately, we're all explorers in the void. Imagine a future. You know how quickly an advanced civilization would be built if parents inspired their children to be explorers of reality. The journey of how we're being an intelligent being. You know, sometimes I find it fascinating that there's so many variables of non-existence, but I'm existing. To me, it's kind of like existence has a bizarreness to it, because who's watching existence? That means something that is beyond the existence is watching the existence again. It's another way of saying the story of the human being is like an Iron Man suit. It's an ideological Iron Man suit we're all wearing. When we step out of this Iron Man suit, we can step any Iron Man suit. Right? It's another way of saying, like, some people get possessed by ideologies, others are poetically, let's say, have a sort of playful mastery. And what that means means is that you trust your mind. Anybody who trusts their mind reveals itself. Your skills and abilities are actually trust triggered. So whoever you are, buy a notebook, wonder about, what your future self could be seeing right now. An advanced civilization awaits. It's the greatest game of species in the cosmos. The mystery of our eyes is a force that allows effort to come forth. And whoever you are, I'll tell you, your emotions are limited to your context of reality. So it's as if we are to be a concept in the world, at least make the context universal. I'm living as much as I'm a human being, universal. Because the mind is a way of saying truth is boundaryless. Therefore inconceivable. We are awakening from a linguistic hibernation. The era of advanced communication will lead to, what it is, the world thought philosophers were unnecessary and now realizes we need the psychology of the users of the technologies of the world to advance as much as the technology does. And advanced civilization arises when beings become advanced.